Welcome, everyone, to Color Commentary. We are your popper commentators, Michael Petchik and Adrian Guarzales. How's it going, Adrian?
Oh, good.
I just want to see how long that pause can actually get. Like,
I could make it last the whole episode if you let me.
All right. So, how's your week been? You been playing any popper, or you been busy?
I've been busy, and I will let everyone know I discovered my old friend Age of Empires 2, and that has taken a lot of hours. It's easy to lose 5 hours to that game in a given night.
You do love your childhood video games.
Formative years, Mike.
I do want to share with the folks at home that while he came halfway across the country to visit me, Adrian did play through the entirety of Monkey Island.
And most of the second one as well.
Okay, there you go. Yeah.
I could play that first one in my sleep. Like, I think I probably finished it over the course of like 3 hours as we were watching TV.
Yeah, I think that was when we binged The Defenders. But let's take care of upkeep here. So first off, I want to tell you about Original Magic Art. We have an affiliateship with Original Magic Art. They are a great website that features art from throughout the history of our world, as well as specifically magic art. They do a lot of really cool limited run stuff with collaborating with artists to release art that hasn't been on merch yet. They also do a series called the Classic Art Token series, and those are always super, super nice. They cherry pick a lot of classic art, and being a huge art nerd, I absolutely adore pretty much everything they do. I'm not gonna lie. But I'm just looking right now that you can currently, you can get stuff like they have a Days playmat featuring the fancy Invocation art. They have a playmat with Cruel Ultimatums art on it. They do all sorts of really cool officially licensed stuff, and you should definitely check them out. And if you do, and if you think about making a purchase, be sure to use the coupon code Commontary, misspelled as it is in our name, in all caps, and you will get 5% off your order, and the show gets a little kickback. So, you're helping us keep the lights on here at Color Commentary. We're also on Patreon. You want to tell us about that one?
Is there something else you might have wanted to say about Original Magic Art?
Yeah, they do have a popper token collection that is just the best.
I meant wink. Is there something you want to say about them, or are we just going to skip over that?
Oh, no, we can talk about that. In a couple weeks, we're actually going to be having the, I believe, owner and creator of Original Magic Art, Josh Krause, on the show. And we're really excited about that. We're going to have an episode that is very tangentially popper related. We're going to talk about the art of Magic the Gathering, and I'm really excited for it. So,
me too. All right, cool. I just wanted to make sure. I didn't know if you wanted to say it, but I'm glad I asked.
All right. Well, yeah. All right. I think this is one that we can let people get hyped for. Why don't you tell us about the Patreon?
Yeah. We don't make enough money on this 5%. I'll just say it to everyone. That's all Mike and I are motivated by. And it's not enough. We have this thing called Patreon, which allows you to donate directly to us. You don't have to. We'll never put up a paywall. We're always going to be a free podcast. But if you do like our work and you do think we deserve it, of course, you certainly don't have to. You can certainly think we deserve it and not want to and not do it. But if you do, we have a Patreon and you can support us. We have a couple different tiers. We're talking about reworking them to be a little bit more friendly to newcomers. But yeah, you should check us out, patreon.com/color commentary. And if you like the show, please support us. We'd really appreciate it.
And you can even get extra content. There's like 5 or 10 minutes before and after each episode where we just, kind of talk, and you get to see us as people. Or
one time I tried to play a game over and it didn't go well.
All right. So before we get into our usually scheduled content, we got a huge amount of spoilers for the upcoming set Ixalan. And for those who have not been paying a lot of attention to the world outside of Pauper, a while back there was a large leak. Someone who's working at one of the printers that prints Magic cards went home with an entire uncut sheet of rares out of Ixalan. They were published on the internet, and it kind of took a lot of the wind out of the sails.
Pirate joke.
Yep, we're in store for like 3 months of really bad jokes, just so everyone's aware. But R. But recently they published an article basically acknowledging what had happened and just dumping all of the cards that were already leaked anyway. And in that, there was also an article about the mechanics, which featured a handful of Pauper legal cards. And let's get right into it. The first mechanic that they've premiered is Enrage, and Enrage is templated as whenever this creature is dealt damage effect. So the first Pauper legal one that we got is Sun-Crowned Hunters, which is 4 red for a 5/4 dinosaur, which in case, again, you have missed everything about Ixalan, there are dinosaurs here. It's kind of neat. And it has Enrage. Whenever Sun-Crowned Hunters is dealt damage, it deals 3 damage to target opponent. So we've also seen ones at other rarities that draw cards or, do other things like that. And we've even seen enablers at uncommon that ping everything. So what are your thoughts on this mechanic?
Everyone, get in here. Hearthstone joke.
I don't get this at all, but is there an ability similar to this in Hearthstone where if something takes damage, effect happens?
The old Splinter Twin deck used to run this card called Grim Patron. Whenever it takes non-lethal damage, it creates a copy of itself.
Gotcha.
And then you gave them haste. That deck's not around anymore, but that's what it reminds me of. It does seem sweet. Certainly, if you get a good black or blue one, Evankar's Justice gets pretty appealing.
Yeah.
Sun-Crowned Hunters, I'm not a big fan of, but that's because it's 6 mana red card. And there's not really a big red deck in the format, but I think that the ability is definitely sweet. It makes blocking the creature a lot worse. In this case, you definitely want to kill the creature if you can, because 5 versus 3. But it definitely puts your opponents in a difficult position. Like, what if, and especially like, what if? And I'm sure this will not be a common one. What if you had a blue one at common, just Enraged draw a card, and it had more than 2 toughness? Then that could make Teachings put Teachings back on the map. The Evankar Justice style one.
Yeah. So far, we have seen one that is Enraged draw card. It is a rare in green, but
yeah,
I think that this they did preview the legendary dinosaur for the set, and it is in Naya colors. So I think Enrage is going to be in the Naya range of things. But I could see,
it doesn't make a lot of sense as a blue mechanic.
Yeah, I'm thinking we might see something with this ability in green or white that might be playable, because those are colors that are already, wading into combat all the time. I worry that the red ones are going to all be similar to this, where it just hits your opponent if it takes damage. But we still have plenty of spoilers to come. Next up, do you want to talk about this one? You do love pirates so much.
Yeah, treat me like a pirate. Give me that booty. We got Prosperous Pirates, 5-drop 3/4, whose flavor text I love. I'm going to read that before I tell you what the card does. The floating city of High and Dry. That's in a very appropriate pirate city name everywhere. This is I'm an expert. That's a great pirate city name, High and Dry. Hasn't yet sunk under the weight of gold, but it's not for want of trying. Dude, I love the flavor. Love the flavor. When it enters the battlefield, it creates 2 colorless treasure artifact tokens with tap, sacrifice this artifact out of 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. Basically, it's a 3/4 in blue that comes with 2 lotus petals, which is it's just awesome. I like it a lot. I think this card is going to be real good.
So as plenty of people on the subreddit and other places have pointed out, a pair of familiars and a Mnemonic Wall or Archaeomancer and Ghostly Flicker does go infinite. That is a 5-card combo, but I'm just going to say it might look bad. Someone is going to 5-0 with it. I guarantee you, because someone is just going to slam this against the wall until they get through.
Dude, I agree. I don't think the card is amazing because, you do need the cost reductors. Like with Drake, you didn't need any cost reduction. You just played Drake, Muldrifter, and you were good to go. I don't know if this card is Mull Drifter. This card is not Mull Drifter good. In fact, I'll say instead of drawing 2 cards, it gives you 2 additional mana. That being said, I do like I said, I love the flavor, and I do think it is going to be a strong contender. We just don't really have a big blue deck for this to go into.
Yeah, because it does very efficiently kind of, if you play this on turn 5 and then hit your land drop next turn, this ramps you quite nicely into 8 mana. I could see, maybe this is a Tron thing just because it's only 1 colored pip. It, lets you fix your mana a little bit. And I don't know. I'm just seeing it as, a way to ramp out stuff quickly. Also, I do want to get on a soapbox for just a second here. It does deeply bother me that there's already the gold tokens that we saw in Theros block and more recently in the latest Commander product. And they do the exact same thing. And it kind of bothers me now that we have treasure and gold as separate tokens that are exactly the same. But, that hopping off the soapbox, that's just me.
Well, Mike, can you hear that?
What?
It's rock and roll for Kasparek. You know what he's playing? He's playing under Jolly Roger, and it's running wild all over again.
All right. So next up, we've got a keyword ability. So this is printed on Tishana's Wayfinder, which is 2 and a green for a 2/2. It's a Merfolk Scout. Merfolk in this set are blue-green, apparently. And it has, when Tishana's Wayfarer enters the battlefield, it explores. And then it's got a whole bunch of reminder text. And what explore means is you reveal the top card of your library, put that card into your hand if it's a land. Otherwise, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature, then put the card back or put it in your graveyard. So this represents, it's either going to be a 2/2 Coiling Oracle, or it's going to let you I guess not a Coiling Oracle. Coiling Oracle puts it into play. So it's either 3 mana for a 2/2 draw card, or it's 3 mana for a 3/3 kind of scry 1. I really like this ability for limited, but I'm not convinced this is going to be good enough for constructed play in Pauper. What do you think?
Yeah, gosh, what does it go into? I'm hoping that because of all these sweet abilities, we might get a new archetype, but it's really just like a value green creature in a format with not a lot of value green creatures. So it's sort of the same problem as Suncrown Hunters. The ability is really sweet, but just like, what do you put this in?
I wouldn't mind seeing Explore on a... I guess the way it's templated, I don't know if this can go on a spell. Because I know.
Yeah, because I think Explore, you put a 1/1 counter.
Yeah, okay. I was going to say, I kind of would like that, the chunk of text about revealing the top card. If it's a land, put it in your hand, or, bin it. I kind of would love that on a spell, but yeah, the +1/+1 counter and the phrasing of it's different than, for example, Investigate. I am also going to make a prediction here that we're going to see something similar to, I don't know if you remember Confirmed Suspicions from Shadows over Innistrad, the one that's like counter spell, investigate 3 times. I have a feeling we're going to see some sort of permanent that explores multiple times in a row.
Okay, yeah, I could see that.
And why don't you take our last of 4 that we really want to talk about? Again, a pirate.
Yeah, giving me all the pirates, huh? Deadeye Tormentor, 2 and a black, 2/2, so not impressive stats. Raid, when Deadeye Tormentor enters the battlefield, if you attack the creature this turn, target opponent discards a card. Again, probably gonna be very sweet and limited. It's a not as good Mardu Skull Hunter, which did a very similar thing, but entered tapped and had 1 less toughness, but did cost less. But it's still a sweet card, and I do like Raid. Mardu, I think, was the best deck back in Triple Cons. It was the one I certainly played the most. And Raid is a very strong mechanic because it incentivizes you to always be the aggressor in a colors that want to be aggressive.
Yeah, and I think that this is going, because we've seen some of the signposts on commons. It looks like Black-Red is kind of a pirates aggro tribal deck in Limited. So I'm definitely hoping that we see something else. Raid is a really well-designed mechanic. I actually really enjoy it. It just kind of, I like the fact that for newer players, it incentivizes you to play creatures in your second main phase. So I think like it's very good for teaching people valuable strategic things. But I also just think like it's a very elegantly designed mechanic. And if you put it in colors that already want to be attacking a lot, it just fits perfectly. So I'm glad to see Raid come back. All right.
Raid.
So now that we've seen the beginning of this set, we were pretty hyped on this. How are you feeling? Hype levels the same, lesser, greater?
Still pretty high. Unfortunately, by nature of the decks I play in various formats, I don't really get a lot of good, cool new stuff. But I do love Grixis is probably one of my favorite color combinations. Grixis Pirates is awesome. Naya Dinosaurs. I love dinosaurs. I love pirates. I have a lot of like very strong attachment to the flavor. So I'm still very hyped. Yeah. And I think that it's going to be really fun. I might even play limited for this set.
Yeah, this looks like a very interesting limited format because it seems to have a lot of things going on at once. You've kind of got the aggro elements. You've got ramp elements as well in the form of the treasure tokens. Like there's definitely this weird blue-black ramp deck that I am super excited to see if it's good. I don't know. This just looks like a sweet format, and it's kind of tribal because we've also got vampires in black-white. We didn't have an example for them at Common yet, but so we've got 2 guilds and 2 shards for our like tribes, which is kind of a cool way to design a set. So I don't know. I'm very, very excited, and we will continue to keep you all updated on spoilers as they come, and not just because it makes for easy discussion. All right, so let's get into our regularly scheduled programming. We have a deck that what place did this come in the last challenge?
Oh, I'd have to look. Let me go look real fast.
But this is a list that showed up in the challenge and also showed up in the challenge immediately preceding it with a different pilot. And this is a blue-red. Yeah,
it came in 14th. It came in 14th.
Okay, so not top 8, but still a decent showing. So this deck is a blue-red Delver deck, and it's not the one you're thinking of. So we start with 4 Delver of Secrets. You know it, you love it. It's the 1/1 that is almost always going to become a 3/2 flyer very quickly. But then it veers directly in a different direction entirely with Firebrand Archer and Thermo Alchemist. And these are both repeatable damage sources. So this deck is kind of just burn splashing blue. Do you think that's a fair way to phrase it?
Sorry, I clicked off of it. Let me go back. Yes, it's the win cons of burn, but the card manipulation, the library manipulation of blue, because we're setting up. Sorry, I'm like trying to get back to it. We're setting up the Thunderous Wraths, which is really what makes this deck. But basically, it's not like I would say yes and no. Yeah, it's basically burn with Delver, and then it's playing just good blue cards.
Yeah, we've got 4 Ponder, 4 Days, which we'll talk about more, and 4 Brainstorms representing the blue spells here. So we've got Brainstorm, not only for the Delver's Secret synergy, but also there's Thunderous Wrath, the downshifted Miracle card from Modern Masters 2017. It also gets to run Magma Jet, which is 2 mana to deal 2, scry 2, 2 copies Fire Blast, 4 Chain Lightning, 4 Lightning Bolts. And I feel like a lot of these are things that most people will be familiar with. We will be including a deck list in the bottom, but I kind of want to get into discussion about this deck and the philosophy behind it and our thoughts on it. Because there's a lot of stuff going on here. We've got these top of library manipulation tricks. We've got a lot of classic burn spells, but we also have a list here running 4 copies of Thunderous Wrath, which is something that Burn absolutely should never do. And then looking at the mana base, 2 copies of Ash Barrens, 4 copies of Evolving Wilds, and 6 islands and 6 mountains. So let's get straight into it. What do you think of this deck?
I don't like it that much. It feels like a blue-red good stuff deck, but like, what if all your Firebrand Archers and Thermo Alchemists die? You know, it's like you're running 12 threats that are all just dead to bolt.
Okay.
And they're just they're just straight up dead to bolt. The most popular deck in the format is Scred Delver, and which runs 4 bolts and some number of Screds and also counter spell. So I'm sure that this deck has nut draws which might seem pretty unbeatable, but if your plan is to like turn 1 Chain Lightning, turn 2 Thermo Alchemist, turn 3 like Ponder Magma, I don't know, like maybe then it's working out for you, but it just seems very, I don't know. A deck with 4 Dazes and 2 Fire Blasts just doesn't seem on paper to be that strong. The results obviously speak for themselves. People piloted this deck somewhat successfully in the challenge, but yeah,
I think I'm there with you on this. It feels like it. So actually, the thing I'd compare this to as well is this versus Blue Red Blitz. Blue Red Blitz is also a threat light deck that has very explosive hands and relies on casting a large density of spells. Goes about it a little bit differently, but I know I'm personally not a fan of Blue Red Blitz, but I can respect its position in the metagame. Would you rather play this list or Blue Red Blitz, and why?
I want to say Blitz because I think the ability to, I think that Blue Red Blitz's nut draws are going to be better than this deck's nut draws. I think the ceiling is just higher, and I think the floor is much higher. So like, what if like let's think worst case scenario with this deck. Like we talked about best case. Let's talk about the hand where you draw like 1 land, 6 spells, and like Delver, and then what?
Yeah, I mean, even outside of like obvious mana screw, like there's just the fact that like you're on 18 lands, you're running, multiple spells that and actively hamper your mana base.
This is a deck, and I know that we sort of play fight over this. This is a deck that I could actually see running Gataxian Probe and liking it.
Yeah, I could actually see that being entirely fine here. Just kind of thin the deck a little bit, and
well, it triggers your threats.
I was gonna say it's another hit. It's still a hit for Delver, and it hits both Archer and Alchemist, and I think that's good for it. I don't know. I can't look at this and see anything other than a Blue Red Blitz deck that's intentionally handicapping itself so that it doesn't have to ever swing with 8 out of its 12 threats. And I don't think that's good. Like, I don't know. I'm just having this is a real tough sell for me because I see what it's doing. Because like there's a blue-red prowess deck that, was fairly large and modern for a hot minute, and also has seen some, like there's a blue-red burn deck in Legacy that is just fine. Like it gets to play, Force of Will and blasts and stuff. And
well, look, I think something that a lot of people forget also about Legacy is that all of your lands are islands and mountains.
Yeah, and I mean like
all like because you have actual duels and also you have Price of Progress. So
true. Price does even things up pretty quickly. And I'm just looking like you bring up the mana base, and I'm just seeing 6 Pauper legal fetches and 12 basics, and man, like Blue Red Blitz has Blitz in its name, and even that plays gain lands. Like,
yeah,
even that can admit that it needs to be able to hit very specific mana costs on time. And with this deck, there's a decent amount of top deck manipulation in terms of the Ponders, Brainstorms, and Magma Jets, but I can just see, hands with this where it just doesn't pan out because, you fetch for a mountain and you needed an island 3 turns later or something like that. And I don't know. For me, this is a super hard sell. And I don't think the deck is like straight garbage or anything. I think there is a good idea here.
That's why we wanted here on the show, because the deck's a bit of a puzzler. On paper, it doesn't look very good, but obviously it's putting up results, so there must be something there.
Now I brought this up. I think it was in the pre-show. I think we were recording at that point, but I commented about the fact that I think that if you take each one of these cards in a vacuum, every part of this deck is very powerful. Like, none of these are bad cards in a vacuum. I'm just not sure if they add up correctly.
Well, that's the tricky thing too, right? Is this deck has tons of synergy. We're looking at a 30 spell deck, and all 12 of the creatures care about spells, right? Delver wants to flip on spells, and then Firebrand and Thermo both trigger on spells. Maybe what I'm discounting here is if you have a Firebrand Archer and a Thermo Alchemist out, the game is pretty much locked up. Like, maybe we're not respecting that board state enough, unanswered. But I imagine that the damage probably adds up pretty quickly. If you have Firebrand Archer and Thermo Alchemist, if you have 3 of that creature out, I think the game's in the bag. If you have 2, that's going to be pretty tough for your opponent to beat.
Yeah, I would feel more convinced if they weren't incredibly fragile. Like, what removal spells are being run right now that don't kill one or both of those? Like, Firebolt won't kill Thermo Alchemist in one shot, and that's it. I don't know. I see the concept. I'm just not sold on it. And I think, again, I've got to return to the fact that, to me, I just see this and I see a blue-red blitz deck that's less reliable and has slightly more fragile creatures in it. And I don't know. I can't see a reason to play this over blitz.
Sure.
Yeah. You brought up, like, if you have 3 of the alchemists or archers on board, it feels like that's a winning game.
I guess another thing we're overlooking is that it totally gets around fogs.
I mean, I guess that's a valid point. Like, the Denrova Tron decks are still, jamming as many copies of Moments Piece as they can physically fit into that deck. And that is a decent point. I can't help but see the discrepancy in efficiency of, going turn 2 Thermo Alchemist versus turn 2 Kiln Fiend, and then playing the same batch of spells. And, with Kiln Fiend, that could be lethal. With Thermo Alchemist, you might nug them for an extra 3 or 4 damage.
Right.
So I guess this might... I might be willing to concede that this might do better in a long game. But in terms of sheer explosiveness, I have to imagine that Blue-Red Blitz is the deck.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm just trying to make arguments.
Yeah, no. And now in the sideboard, we've got 2 copies of Curfew, which actually, I forget, Curfew is an instant. I do like Curfew as a sideboard card. Curfew is blue for an instant. Each player chooses a creature that they control and returns it to its owner's hand. I do like the ability to kind of potentially brick a removal spell with this and also set your opponent back. I think that's neat. 2 copies Dispel, 2 copies Electrickery, 2 Hydroblast, 2 Pyroblast, 2 Curse of the Pierced Hearts for those slower, grindier matchups, especially ones where they have difficulty interacting with enchantments. 1 copy of Echoing Truth, and 2 copies Smash to Smithereens. All right, so in terms of cost, this is not a cheap one. This is $88.80 online and $62 and change in paper. Now, I feel like I can pretty confidently recommend, if this appeals to you, pick it up. If, it doesn't appeal to you after playing it, you can just build Blitz and you're most of the way to a...
You can Delver deck, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say, actually, would this deck just feel better if it had snow-covered lands and you got to play Scred?
I think the reason it's not playing Scred is Scred does not go face.
I mean, yeah, I get that. All the other stuff is stuff you can point at a creature or a player.
Because otherwise you could just play Flame Slash, right?
True. I mean, I do think the instant speed nature of Scred is not to be underestimated.
Yeah.
But
it's also interesting this deck's not playing Gush.
I mean, if you play Gush in this, that's just too much greed, I think. Like,
yeah, you're probably right.
You're already in the tenuous situation of Fire Blast and 6 mountains. Like, days off 6 islands, I don't approve of, but I can see working.
Mm-hmm.
The Fire Blast off 6 mountains just feels very, very tenuous at best. I guess that's my piece. Do you have anything else to say about this list?
Nah.
All right.
It is what it is. I am what I am.
All right. So we've gotten that deck out of the way. List will be in the comment in the description of this video on YouTube and in the post on our website. But we've got a discussion topic for this week that you picked out, Adrian. So I'm going to let you take it away.
Okay. Our topic today is who is your card advantage and what does it do?
And I do have to tell you, I don't know if you saw, I put this screen cap on Twitter because it made me laugh.
Good. I'm hilarious. I'm really funny. Card advantage is a term that gets talked about a lot. Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm good.
Oh, I just heard a lot of squeaking. Card advantage is a term that gets used a lot in Magic, and I don't think a lot of people really know what it means.
All right, so Dr. Adrian, could you perhaps enlighten us as to the definition of card advantage?
So here's the thing. I was trying to explain it to you before the show, and I actually had a hard time explaining it. So maybe it's not that people don't know what it means. Maybe it's just that it's a little bit hard to explain. I mean, and you know what? I just Googled card advantage, and I'm gonna give you the example that is on Wizards' website.
Okay, hit me with it.
It's Charging Badger, which is a green 1/1 trampler from Born of the Gods, and it compares it to Raise the Alarm, which is an instant that puts 2 1/1 white soldier creature tokens onto the battlefield. So at first glance, it seems, reasonable. Raise the Alarm makes 2 guys, but it costs 2 more. Whereas Charging Badger, it's just a thing for 1. But Charging Badger is a very bad Magic card, and Raise the Alarm is a very good Magic card. And it's because Raise the Alarm makes 2 guys. You spent 1 card to do 2 things.
Yeah, and even in the vacuum, you're getting more mileage in a specific way out of your 1 card than your opponent did. And I think, for example, once you start playing that out more, you start to see more options arise. For example, if you have a combat trick, and in this case, let's replace Charging Badger with Eager Cadet, which is literally a 1/1 white creature for white, just because my example is not going to work with Trample. But let's say you have... Would you rather have Eager Cadet, which is a 1/1 for 1, or Raise the Alarm alongside a pump spell, like having, let's just say Giant Growth for sake of keeping things nice and simple? The 1/1 for 1 is technically the same rate you paid for the Raise the Alarm tokens, but if you swing in with both of those tokens and your opponent doesn't have 2 creatures to block with, you can now get in for 4 damage if you're willing to spend that giant growth just by virtue of you have 2 creatures and they have 1. So
right, and if they block it and you kill it, then you've traded your giant growth for their creature, so you are up on the board, which is a form of virtual card advantage. It gets very complicated, but basically it's that you spend a card out of your hand to either you spend a card out of your hand. What am I trying to say? It's actually a lot harder to describe than I thought it would be.
Well, here's an example. Wrath effects, and we don't really have a proper wrath effect in Pauper, but let's reach outside our usual bounds. Wrath of God is an example, is a form of card advantage, because if you have 2 creatures on the board and your opponent has 6 and you play Wrath of God and it resolves, it's
2 for 1.
Well, you're losing 2 things as well. So you've lost 3 cards, your opponent has lost 6.
I know I used fractions.
Okay.
But
the long and short of it is you're coming out ahead on that transaction. You've expended fewer resources to cost your opponent more resources.
Yes. So card advantage is very important, and different colors generate it in different ways. Blue is obviously the most broken one because it has card draw, where you spend a card and you get more cards than the card you had spent.
Yeah. And I mean, in some cases, though, it's also more subtle things like Ponder, Preordain, and all of their ilk are really just card neutral. But instead of getting more cards in hand, you're getting to look at some options and pick out a card that is more applicable to the current scenario that you find yourself in. So, card quality also plays a role in this.
Right. But at the same time, if that's why Monarch is so good, because if you just have an unanswered Monarch hat, you will eventually just outdraw your opponent and you'll have way more cards within them to work with. And so you'll be able to hopefully get them because you'll just have way more resources. So it is pretty cool concept.
Yeah. And Monarch, and for the earlier example we came up with of Raise the Alarm, are both examples of how white in Pauper can, have card advantage. White generally, blue and black have kind of the most straightforward examples of card advantage, and the other colors kind of have to look a little bit in terms of what card advantage they provide.
Right. So in white, we have token producers. We already mentioned that. Black, discard is a big form of card advantage. We don't have it as much common, but even cards like Mind Rot or Hymn the Torok are examples of card advantage where you just take away 2 of your opponent's cards for the cost of your card. Also in Pauper, we have Graveyard Recursion, like Tortured Existence. Tortured Existence is an excellent example of just a card advantage, as is that card you like so much. I think it was a Pig Trinket.
Grim Harvest.
Yes, thank you.
Now, those represent a different type of card advantage as well, because when you can start recurring stuff out of your graveyard, as long as there's no restrictions on it, it kind of gives you access to a secondary hand, if you will. Like if you have a Dredger and an active Tortured Existence, you can always get that Dredger back at the beginning of your upkeep if it goes to the bin. So you can just Tortured Existence it away and pick something out of your graveyard that's more relevant in the moment. So it kind of lets the graveyard recursion aspect of card advantage does kind of also turn your graveyard into your hand, if you will. So that's another aspect to this.
Yes.
So with red, how does red get card advantage?
Red is traditionally the color that has the most amount of problems with a card advantage. We only really have removal on here. And even that's not really that good. I would say the best example of red card advantage is probably at the Planeswalker level, where Chandra has an ability where you exile the top card of your library, and then you can cast it or play it. because if it's a land, you can do it.
And weirdly enough, that hasn't really trickled down into Pauper as much. The closest that red really gets to like traditional card advantage is the looting and rummaging effects.
Specifically,
faithless looting.
Faithless looting. The first half is card disadvantage, and then card advantage the second time you do it because you just end up drawing more cards.
Yeah, it's well, even the back half is card neutral. You're just so faithless looting draws 2, you discard 2. So the first time you spend a card to draw 2 and discard 2. So you're actually down a card, but it does have flashback for 2 and a red. So the second time you cast it, you're card neutral. You're just looking at 2 more cards, and this will bring us into an example that a lot of players like to use. But it lets you make sure that you get to see 2 more cards, and hopefully the idea here is the 2 you get rid of were not being useful in the situation anyway. So do we want to talk about Merfolk Looter? One of the perennial examples of, sort of intro to Magic theory questions. The whole, you have a Merfolk Looter, do you activate it? And
I don't know. Why don't you tackle that philosophical problem?
Well, so the answer,
I don't know the question. So
well, so it's usually presented in the context of limited. Like if you have 1 card in hand, and Merfolk Looter, for those who are unfamiliar, is 1 and a blue for a 1/1 that has tap, draw a card, discard a card. So the question is, if you have 1 card in hand, do you activate that Merfolk Looter? And in my opinion, the answer is always yes, because let's look at our options. So I have a card in hand that's okay. We'll call it a 3 out of 5. If I activate the ability and I draw a card that is, I draw a basic land and I don't need any more lands, so it's functionally, a 1 or 0 out of 5, I just get rid of that. If I draw something that is on par with the card already in my hand, then I have a bit of a tough decision. I've got to figure out which one of these is more likely to pay off. And then the other example is you just draw something that's much better than what you had in your hand, and you get rid of the thing you had in your hand, and you've just upgraded. But in all those situations, you're not really losing anything, except if you're really attached to what's in your hand. But I feel like most of the time, even if that card in your hand is a 5 out of 5, I feel like you just activate the looter just because it lets you look at another card, and that is a form of card advantage.
Yeah, absolutely. Being able, because if it's a bad card, you throw it away if you don't. Yeah, so okay, I understand where you're coming from here.
Now that said, how many looting effects do we really ever see played besides faithless looting? Like,
would you consider? I mean, Forbidden Alchemy is not really a looting. So.
No. Now
self mill certainly, but yeah, not so much looting.
And self mill kind of ties into the recursion plan and also other mechanics that interact with the graveyard. For example, in Blue Black Alchemy, which is a fairly popular deck, Forbidden Alchemy serves 2 roles. It lets you do an impression of impulse, look at the top 4, pick 1, it goes to your hand. But in that deck, you're also putting cards into your graveyard, and you're playing cards like Soul Manipulation and Gurmag Angler that want things to be in your graveyard anyway. So card advantage engines kind of have to sing together. Like everything has to kind of work in unison. And to get really the best mileage out of them. Now with Blue's sort of card advantage, we've got cards all over the place. Like we've got, everything ranging from Think Twice and, the 1-mana cantrips to stuff like Distant Melody and Elves that draws an absurd amount of cards. So I don't know. When it comes to card advantage, what have you found to be the most valuable forms of card advantage in Pauper?
Preordain.
I mean that's definitely like one of the chief examples of
Monarch is pretty good. Monarch is really good. Monarch is like the example of like just raw cards, which aren't necessarily always a good thing. If you draw 6 lands, those 6 lands didn't help you, and so But whereas with blue, you can sort of sculpt your hand a little bit better. So yeah, I would say maybe Monarch, but probably I don't know. Also, Affinity has a lot of built-in card advantage between Thoughtcast and stuff like that. So
well, I'd like to raise a point about the Monarch. At what point are you happy with Monarch, specifically in the Boros deck? So you're paying 4 mana for this ability, and let's say your opponent is not doing anything and you're just getting to sit there. How many live draw, realistically, how many good draws do you have to get off that before you feel happy about it?
A lot.
Really?
The overall, most of the cards in the Boros deck have 2 power. So you have to build up a pretty sizable board before you can start thinking about winning the game. Generally, you're trying to control your opponent out or grind your opponent out until you're the one with the 2/2 or the 2/3, and then you try and win, and you try to answer all the threats with the removal in your hand or send it upstairs if necessary. So I guess I would want to draw a couple cards off of it, but really, the first time you play it, it's always going to replace itself. It's really only a problem because it's kind of like playing with fire, because if your opponent gets it, they got it for free.
Yeah, and obviously, that's part of the design of Monarch as an ability, and it's actually one of the things that I really like about that mechanic is that, it kind of represents this, like without the ability for it to swap back and forth, it represents this unanswerable card advantage. But with the ability to swap it back and forth, it now becomes kind of this mini game in and of itself. And
the thing is, I will make some bad trades in order to keep Monarchs. I know in the long run, the card draw will pay off for it.
Yeah, I mean, if you make one bad trade and you draw into a creature because of the Monarch, you've kind of not actually negatively affected yourself as much. Now, let's talk about removal. So when would you class removal as card advantage?
When you use it to 2-for-1 your opponent, if they have an aura, or if they have they try and do something to their creature, and then you kill the creature in response, and it's a 2-for-1.
Yeah, there's also the example of instant speed removal during combat where you have, let's say, a Gurmag Angler, and your opponent has a pair of 3/3s. But in your hand, you have a Doomblade. Let's just keep these examples simple. You swing in, your opponent goes, oh, well, I can block with my 2 3/3s and kill their 5/5, and I'm only going to lose a 3/3. And for me, that feels like a great deal. And then you get to Doomblade one of their things, and they lose a creature. So you functionally traded 1 card, the Doomblade, for 2 creatures of theirs. So I think that's, a form of card advantage that should be thought about, the ability to kind of get those mid-combat blowouts. But there's also the fact that, and we should touch on this, mana efficiency and sort of mana advantage. Let's say your opponent has spent a lot of time trying to get a Ulamog's Crusher on the board, and they've spent a lot of resources to make sure that they got to 8 mana as soon as possible. If you get to trade a 2-mana removal spell for that, that feels pretty good. Like you spent less resources trying to deal with their threat than they spent getting it online.
Yeah, pretty good.
And obviously, this is a deep, deep topic that we are scratching the surface here, but we do talk about card advantage on the podcast fairly frequently, and I think it is good to actually try and talk about what it is at some point. Also, do you want to? You've played with this sort of stuff more than I have. Do you want to talk about the Ichor Wellsprings, Core Skyfisher, that whole package, and how that constitutes a form of card advantage?
Yeah. So basically, these cards. So the first one draws you a card, it just replaces itself. Ichor Wellspring, Prophetic Prism. You play it, you draw a card. Whoop-de-doo. It starts getting interesting in the Boros decks because you can return them to your hand. So the second time you cast it, you're up a card. You've played it. You've deployed a creature. You're up a card. So good. And then you keep doing it. So over the course of the game, you could easily draw, like if all of your, it's basically all of your threats also draw you a card for +2 mana. Would you play that creature? Would you play a creature with kick, draw a card?
Yeah, kicker 2 draw a card is a great and efficient way of doing things. And actually, I believe in Invasion Block, that was pretty much going rate for stuff that had kicker draw a card. It was, or not Invasion Block, kicker. Invasion had a whole bunch of cantrips that were basically an existing spell +2 generic mana, and it drew you a card as well.
Yeah,
so,
and obviously that's simplifying things a little, but
yeah, we're speaking very broad strokes here, but that card advantage engine is one where it's card advantage, it's expensive card advantage, but you are using, you're using, if you go Ichor Wellspring, Skyfisher, pickup Wellspring, you spent you played 2 cards and you netted 2 additional cards off of that transaction. And yes, you spent 6 mana to do that, but in the end, you've got that Wellspring ready to be picked up again. You also, on top of that, have a 2/3 flyer in play. So it's definitely one of the sort of more moving parts styles of card advantage, but it is now at this point kind of a linchpin of the format, I would say.
Well, yeah, it used to not be good because it was 3 colors, but the Boros version is very good.
Yeah, it turns out cutting out blue was one of the best things that happened to that deck.
Interesting how that works.
It's funny that the deck with the grindy card advantage engine in it was better served in the aggressive colors, but and also, while we're on the topic of Boros, there's also Thraben Inspector, who, represents her own type of card advantage, where she comes in, she gets a clue.
Yeah. Thraben Inspector is kind of the same thing. Kick 2, draw a card.
Yeah, except you get to play it anytime you want in the future. And there's other interactions as well, but that's an example of like that whole deck is kind of at this point this tuned machine where all the parts kind of interact with one another, and it works out really well. I mean, the deck's still putting up very good results, and
I love that deck.
I know you do. I know. And I'm looking up here. We're coming up close on an hour. Do we have any other sort of big things we want to hit in terms of this discussion about card advantage?
I think I'm good. I think I'm done. I think I said my piece.
All right. Do we want to do some card guessing, or do you just want to take a second?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, dude, let's do some card guessing. I have heard through the grapevine, that grapevine we call life, from a little bird on the grapevine, that this is far and away everyone's favorite section. So I'm going to do it forever and ever and ever. I could do this for an entire hour. If enough people wanted us to, I would.
Yeah. If enough people on Patreon or Twitter, even, hell, if enough people who just ask us to, we would.
Yeah, we would. People like it that much. So I'm going to hit random card here. Oh, we got a good one. You're going to get this one. This one's really easy. Oh, it's so easy. It's a Legends rare. So A, reserve list. No, dude, you 100% know this card. B, 3 and a black. Type, world enchantment. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, destroy target non-artifact creature that player controls of his or her choice. It cannot be regenerated.
Okay. This is the Abyss. I was really worried that I was going to have to listen to the text of Chains of Mephistopheles tonight, and I don't need that evil in my life.
Dude, this card is A, really good. B, the art is amazing. And C, the flavor text is back from when they used to use real world flavor text.
What is the flavor text? I don't think I've ever actually seen a copy of the Abyss in person.
An immense river of oblivion is sweeping us away into a nameless abyss. From Ernest Renan, Souvenirs d'enfance et de jeunesse. I don't speak French, but that's my best. My best.
You gave it a good old college try.
All right, you're not going to get this one. 2 in a blue. Creature, Merfolk Soldier. Blank enters the battlefield with 2 -1/-1 counters on it. Blue, untap. Move a counter from target creature onto a second target creature. Untap is the untap symbol.
Yep. So this is something out of Shadowmoor.
Yes. It's a merfolk.
It's a merfolk soldier. This is
He
when
likes.
this is when they got all freaky and have like the white eyes, right? Or
Yeah, he likes little blood sucking friends. That helps.
I'm not gonna get this. You've given me leech and I can't get it. I was gonna go with something relating to. Oh no, it's not either the Ink Fathom cards. I do not know this. What is it?
Leech Bonder.
Huh. That is a weird card. Shadowmoor's a weird set.
This one's lame. This one's lame.
Is it a vanilla creature? Because I'm not gonna get that.
Yeah. Here's a good one. For another black enchantment. 4 and a black. Originally from Scourge, reprinted in M12 enchantment. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player sacrifices a non-zombie creature. At the beginning of the end step, if no creatures in the battlefield, sacrifice blank.
Oh no. I saw this card just the other day. I can see the art in my head, and I also did not know it was from Scourge as well. I'm gonna have to pass on this one as well. I don't know the name, and it's gonna kill me when I hear it.
It's Called to the Grave.
Call to the Grave. Okay. Yeah, I saw that one just the other day when I was playing around with commander list ideas.
All right, I'm looking for another good one. One more good one for the road. Oh, here's a good one. Oh, this is a good one. It's an uncommon from Mirrodin. Type artifact. Cost 3. Whenever blank or another artifact enters the battlefield, put a charge counter on blank. 3 tap. Remove a charge counter from blank. Draw a card.
This is Serum Tank.
Yes.
Okay, because I was only coming up with Arcane Spyglass, which is a similar card but involves sacrificing lands and is awful. All right.
Well,
okay.
I'll take a snap.
All right.
Thanks for joining us today. This podcast is brought to you by the support of our patrons. Consider supporting us if you like the show or if you want an hour of that. Check below this video with the description of this podcast for details on where to find us. We'd like to remind you that if you're listening to this on a platform with reviews, they're always appreciated because you know what? They boost our visibility. If you've got a deck list or an idea for a topic, feel free to contact us either via our website or by emailing us directly at commentary@gmail.com. Special thanks to Pat's Games and, of course, L for our theme music. Till next week, this is Adrian and Mike, and we are signing off for Color Commentary.